Cool. Excellent. Cool. All right. Well, yeah, got a bunch of people on here already. I can't see anything. There we go. Perfect. Yeah, we've got a bunch of questions. I think Kylee should be on. Hopefully she's going to be on pretty soon. But if not, the three of us kind of glossed these over this week. So hopefully she have some good answers and some fun questions for everybody. Yeah, I don't feel like chitter chattering too much.
I know you're usually so chatty. It's unlike you.
I know. Okay. Yeah, let's just get into some questions, right? Let's start with, I like to start with the easy question.
Cool.
Because I need to warm up.
Yeah.
Bowie, no, get out of there.
She's fine.
She's drinking out of the toilet again.
It's fine.
It's not fine. It's not okay.
It's fine.
It's not
Everything's fine.
No, it's bad. It's very bad. Okay.
That meme with like fire everywhere else. And dog's just sitting there being like, it's fine, it's fine.
All right. Well, anyways, okay. To join or not to join Strava? That's the topic of question number one.
Question.
I guess this athlete has tried Strava before, but then decided to delete it. She's always asked by people to reactivate it so they can follow her adventures and activities. But her, she kind of fears her competitive nature and the comparison side of being on Strava. And so, hasn't wanted to be on it, but now has reactivated it. So she'd like to know what our thoughts are on using Strava and how it can help you with training and how maybe it can hurt you a little bit with training. Yeah, we can definitely get into this one. I think that is a great topic.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Would you like to start us off?
I'm very conditionally pro Strava. I think comparison is normal and natural. And that's like literally what racing is, right? Is you're running in proximity to other people to see who performs better under certain conditions on a certain day. I would say in comparison is an okay thing, so long as it does not become negative. When comparison is an issue is when it's like in the driver's seat. When you comparing yourself to others is the heuristic upon which you're making decisions, right? Like you get on Strava, you see so-and-so did a run at XYZ pace and you want to go faster than is easy for you. That's, when it starts to influence your decision-making, that's when it's really, really a problem or it starts to affect like mental health. If you are unable to not let that comparison be in the driver's seat, then Strava may not be a good choice for you right now. And you can always, you don't have to be on forever. You don't have to get on every day, but I think it's really useful. I think the biggest thing for me is being able to see the like trend line of my training over time. And I also really like to see historical data, like compare. I do like the same run almost every day. And I think it's really valuable for me to see where things are. And like, if I'm progressing over time, even though I'm obviously not trying to like PR segments every single day, I think that, being on Strava for I think I've probably been on 5 years now. It's a valuable tool because you get that access to historical efforts. And it's a great way to find segments and find, you can look at the steepness of certain segments. So if you're trying to find that 6 to 8% hill, Strava does that for you. But again, if it's, and it just depends on the person. If it helps drive productive training habits, great. But if it doesn't, then, you'll be fine without it.
Well, I think, there's something to say too, is that you can switch your privacy settings so that you're the only person who can see what's going on. Like you can keep all of that private if you don't want other people to see, or if you have a tendency to compare yourself. I mean, that's like, I've recently done that and it's just like opened up a whole new world to me. So I'm just kind of like experimenting with the different aspects of Strava and like what they offer, but you can definitely, you can keep your name on the leaderboard. If you crown something, whatever, it's totally fine. But then you can also go in and use all of the features that Strava has to offer without having that comparison. So that's another option if you don't want to completely get rid of Strava, but you maybe want to still keep using it. Just like another option.
Yeah, absolutely. Kylie, yeah, what do you think about Strava? I think you have a private profile.
I just have private in regards to like the friend thing where people have to like request to like follow you on Strava. Which I guess maybe that's what you guys are talking about. But yeah, I just I kind of go through phases. I get in the competitive mindset too much, and I find that Strava is not necessarily good for me. So I think that it is a personal choice. I think there are other ways to organize your training as well. So I like sometimes to see on certain runs like what I'm doing, but then other runs, like especially easy recovery runs, I don't necessarily like even using Strava. So I might just like not record that run. So I think it's kind of like a personal preference in that sense, because I might end up going too hard if I record on Strava and I'm like, I'm on this segment or whatever. So yeah, that's just me though. I know a lot of people that record everything on Strava. So
Totally. Yeah. I'm one of those people who puts all the runs on Strava. But I can definitely understand, like, yeah, it's very easy to get yourself into a, kind of a mindset of comparison and then take it too far. I think it's really easy, especially for athlete, any athlete of any, ability level, actually. It's not just, athletes who are like looking to, go from, mid-pack to top 10 or top 10 to podium, that have these issues comparing their training to what other athletes are doing. But I think that it happens at all levels. As a coach,
if you look at Jim Walmsley's Strava before Western States, he went like into dark mode, like stealth mode for a month and a half because he was injured and was basically just biking. And then in kind of a savage cross training flex, turned his Strava back on right before Western States. And everyone was like, what the heck? Like, this guy's just been biking. And then he still came out and won.
Well, to be fair, he was running 130-mile weeks.
No, he dropped all the way down to 80.
That was like 8 weeks before
when he was
race.
Injured.
He definitely did some big volume. He went from like 0 to
definitely
100.
Like call out too, though. I mean, with athletes who are either like getting ready for a big race or whatever, like a lot of people will go, I've definitely been guilty of this when I see like who's on the starting line in ultra sign up. You can go and like look at other people's, Strava, but is that good for your mental health? Is that good for your overall well-being? Absolutely not. So I think that like investing too much energy and putting too much into what other people are doing on Strava is like pretty detrimental, would not recommend. And I think like Strava is a cool place for community and to, like kind of like Zoe said, find routes, figure out what segments are where, but it's not the be all end all of running. Like keeping a paper, like a tangible, running journal is okay too. Like there's antiquity in that, which I love. But I think that if it gets to the point where you're feeling down on yourself or frustrated because you're not running the same mileage as someone else who you're of equal or whatever capabilities, you got to reframe your mindset.
Yeah, I don't think Strava is unhealthy or looking at what another athlete that you're going to be racing against is up to training wise. It's all about how you interpret and use that information. That's a choice that you make based on where you're at with all of this stuff, and I think a lot of that comes down to just how comfortable you are in your own skin, how comfortable you are in owning your own training. And so sometimes looking at being on Strava and having an issue with other people's training, if that is like a trigger for you to get into a kind of mode of self-comparison, that's a strong sign that you've got work to do there. And that's okay. It's okay to have work to do there. And don't take that as a negative criticism. Just take that as information that you can use, because we can all improve on these things. As a coach, I find it tremendously helpful when my athletes are on Strava. Now, if you have a private profile and I can still follow you on there, that's very helpful for me, because that's a great tool for me to see all of the work that you've done historically, to really get to look at how consistent you've been. Also, for athletes who try to sneak in that run on a rest day, I'm watching, I can see that. I know if you're doing things that are not in alignment with good training practices. And I've definitely sniped people on that before. So I find it really, really helpful. Do you have to be engaging in it? Not necessarily. I mean, I think a lot of people who know me and know me well know that I used to be huge into social media, especially in my ski career. And now I rarely, if ever, use social media. And that's, because getting off and stopping scrolling and engaging is extremely therapeutic. It's very healthy for you mentally and emotionally. The same thing can be said for Strava. I mean, if you're on there scrolling and looking and scrolling, you're not resting. And we talked about this in the last call on Monday. How you spend your downtime, it really matters, right? So, setting proper boundaries with these things, and just understanding, what are your reactions to this? If you're not in a place of ownership yet with your training and you're really having trouble comparing yourself to others, limiting the amount of time on Strava is going to be really healthy for you and very beneficial. If it's something where you go on to Strava and you see that you're running, slower than X person, and then you're friends with them, and then, whatever it is, however the comparison process starts, or they're a pro and you're a pro, or, you want to race against them, and whatever it is, that's an indication that hey, it's okay. You can step back from Strava and just sink into your own plan. But I think that, using it on with the privacy settings on, can be really helpful, because you want to be able to contextualize your training. A lot of athletes that come in to work with us at Microcosm think they're consistent runners, but the fact of the matter is they are not. And that's not to say that, most of the people on this call, you're consistent. You're not having issues with that. You're actively engaging with the process. But there's a lot of other athletes who really feel like 2 runs a week or 3 runs a week is consistent running. And the fact of the matter is that that's not consistency. And sometimes it takes a visual, kind of a graphic in Strava, seeing that chart, seeing how all your consistency lines up to really get that message through. I've recognized that in my own training in the past, here's how consistent I was at this time. Here's where I was inconsistent. Why? What were the reasons? Oh, I was skiing too much, or whatever it is. That's the stuff. These tools can be really effective when used in the right context.
Yeah, Strava, conditionally a good tool. Strava, totally neutral depending on how you use it.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I love the talk of Strava, though. I mean, at least for me, sometimes I get in the process of,
I'm a Strava
looking at the leaderboards too much. But I think that the cool thing for me about Strava, at this point, is just seeing what other routes athletes, mountain athletes, are doing. Because there's a lot of creative link ups happening now in the mountains, some off trail adventures happening in our areas. And so I don't always have time to do that research on my own, because I'm engaged with coaching process and things like that like kind of take up my time. And then like when I go on, I'm like, oh, cool. Like, look at, what Sean did, or look at like what, Joe DeMore did, or like some good runners in our area. It's like, wow, I can
excellent outlet for pictures of Kylie's dogs.
Like, or just keeping up with other.
I wish
people
Lotzi
that we
had
don't
a
get to see.
Strava.
Yeah, we should track Lotzi's activity. It's like
he gets his own profile.
Oh, Denzel, he also mentions here, which I didn't know this was a function, but that you can mute athletes on Strava. So if you're constantly comparing yourself to like a friend of yours, or maybe a frenemy, whatever, like you can mute that person. And I would say that could be healthy. I guess you could do that on social media now as well, which I think is really great. All right, let's talk about competition, since we're already kind of talking about that a little bit. Oh man, I feel a little head foggy today, so sorry if my answers don't make any sense. In some of the communities I belong to, people often have negative reactions to competition or competitiveness because they see competition as inherently negative or toxic. In some ways, I agree with this perspective, but as someone who enjoys competition, I also don't agree with this perspective. I'm wondering, as coaches, how do you distinguish between healthy and unhealthy competition? Such a good question. I don't know if I want to speak to this first. Kristen, Kylie, does anything kind of come to mind for you guys?
Yeah, I mean,
Zoe?
Yeah, I think, this is something I hear a lot and I've seen athletes struggle with, but I think is a really important, and for me, it's been a really foundational question in my own training. I think particularly women are socialized to not be allowed to be competitive in the same way that men are. And I say that though I have issues with I have issues with aligning kind of like any trait as being inherently one thing or another thing. But for me, competition as a woman is really important because it is something that we have not always been encouraged or been given access to. For me, competition is a mode of pushing myself to do my best and pushing others around me to be their best as well. I think competition becomes negative when, if you fall short, you think you are bad and you start to use it as a referendum on who you are, or if you use it as a way of putting others down. Competition should be a way of lifting yourself and others up. Like, even if you're not winning something or you're not setting out to win something, you should be trying to be your best in a way that distinctly enables others around you to be better as well. Like, particularly when I compete with like my female friends or teammates, I think about how if I run my best race, that will push them or enable them to run their best race as well. And I think about, for me, in order to do my best, I need the competitors around me to be their best, most whole selves as well. And I think that establishing competition as not being a hierarchical pursuit, like it's not about being, better. But it's not about like being inherently better than other people. It's about the pursuit of trying to be your best. It's not about like trying to establish yourself as, better than in a negative way. And I think that, culturally, there's just a lot of really unhealthy conversation around competition as it being in terms of it being a means of putting other people down rather than lifting other people up. The cool thing is that you are fully able and empowered to redefine what competition means for you each time you compete. And for me, I think that's one of the things that fulfills me most about competition, is it's a primary outlet for me to lift others around me up. Like, when I'm out racing, I am cheering super hard for the people I'm competing with. I don't think of competing against, I think of it as competing with. We're doing it together. We're engaged in this pursuit together. And for me to do my best, I need to lift others up around me as well. And, I think that there's something very brave and very vulnerable vulnerable about a woman stepping into a space to claim competition as her own thing, because, socially and culturally, that hasn't always been something that's been praised, or female competition has been cast as like something that's catty, or like women need to, because we've had less access to, being able to establish ourselves as being powerful in arenas, like we're fighting over smaller pieces of the pie. For me, competition is about growing that pie and giving more people, women, however you identify, access to that same level of fulfillment as well.
It's such a nice answer, Zoe. Thank you.
I love it when Zoe takes all the
wow.
words in your brain and then just like, states them eloquently.
Right? How does she do that?
I definitely agree with everything she said. And I've also had experiences where I've been doing like a race or something where, another girl and I are going like neck and neck and a hill comes up and all of a sudden I'm like, oh no. But in this one particular circumstance that I often remember is like this girl, was like, get it, like you can do this, like cheering me all the way up the hill from like 2 steps behind me. And I just remember that being such a pivotal moment in how I understood and framed female competition, because there are so many ways not to do it. And the best ways to do it, like, again, I don't want to completely restate everything that Zoe did, but there's something really powerful about lifting other people up around you.
Totally. That ripple effect, it really is a real thing. Kylee, what are your thoughts?
I agree with what Zoe's saying. When I was in college, I think is where I began to kind of appreciate competition in a way in regards to like team building each other up to kind of be your best self. So what Zoe's saying, like better together in regards to like achieving your potential by helping like your teammates, kind of you work together in your like workouts and things like that. And that is the kind of like competition that I appreciate. And even like, going on a long run with Zoe, we kind of like, we're training together and that like makes us better athletes. So that kind of competition is, I think, a healthy competition. Whereas, if you're always like trying to beat someone else and then utilizing like competition as like a definition of your total self-worth, then that's where it becomes a negative thing. So I'm kind of under the belief that you can use competition in a healthy way to make yourself better, but then there's that other side of things that can kind of tip the other way.
Yeah. I mean, it's just such an important question. And we've talked about this a little bit on previous calls, but it's kind of like the microcosm view that, we're looking at competition as a collaboration of many, and not an individualistic pursuit necessarily. And the important thing to recognize is that many people help you to get to the place where you can run a race and compete at your best, whether it's your coach, your nutritionist, your, any kind of friends, supporters, family, all of the people running that race who are, also out there competing, but also the people who are volunteering, the people who put that race together. It's such a huge collaboration. Without all of those people and without really recognizing that there are many people involved with you having your best day ever out there, you can really start to fall into that trap, I think, where competition just becomes about kind of measuring yourself against the next person, and this pursuit of, results. And we want you guys to know that you're all amazing with or without the results, because that's the truth. And so if we lean too heavily on the competition side of things, we can start to lose sight, I think, of the bigger picture, which is really, really important to what we do here as coaches and kind of, in our mentorship roles. And this kind of raises other questions about, how do we view being great? what is greatness? Is greatness winning a race? Or is greatness something more like what Zoe said, which is lifting up everybody around you during your pursuit of your own best? And it's our view that is more of a reflection of what greatness is. How many people with the ripple effect and, through positive support and love and things like that, how many people can you affect on your way towards your goals? And I think when you start to recognize those things, even through the lens of competition, racing, your results start to be better. The way that you frame races and take pressure off yourself becomes healthier. And so you perform better. And you just become an all around better person. And that's kind of really at the heart of what we're all doing here. The racing, everything is great. And we need to be able to celebrate the training, because without that, it's just training. And just training, it feels a lot more like work most of the time than it does celebrating. And we want to celebrate all the amazing stuff that everybody's doing.
And I think the crucible of competition can really help you be better in training. It can help you be better in life. I think the confidence I've gained from competition has really helped me in being, a better boss, a better coworker, and learning how to lead a magazine and learning how to put myself out there professionally, because I never would have had the balls to try to run a magazine if I wasn't also trying to do big stuff and running. And I think that getting used to being vulnerable and putting yourself out there and applying healthy pressure, those are really valuable life skills. And you don't have to get those through racing. I just think racing is a fairly convenient way of doing that.
Sure. I think also the training process helps to really facilitate those things too.
Yeah. I mean, it's you, but racing is a pretty specific, in a workout, you're applying pressure to yourself, and that's a really valuable kind of discrete skill. In racing, you get the added benefit of the racing atmosphere helping you apply pressure as well.
Yeah. Something that me and Kristen used to always joke about is best friending foes on race day. And I think it's because we all have met, those people on race day who don't want to say hi to you at the start line, don't talk to you at the finish. They are dead silent when you run by them and say, hey, you're looking strong. We've all met those people who have that kind of very singular focused, kind of drive on race day, or almost sometimes a standoffishness kind of energy. And we often joke about that, because I think we sometimes see that in ourselves too on race day, when, we want to do our best. We want to, we're not training to go out there and kind of frolic in the flowers. We're out there training to race hard and to do our absolute best. But you can do that by, being so kind, so gracious, by supporting other people. If you get passed in a race, saying something supportive to that runner, or if you pass somebody. I think something that I really noticed during the pandemic era races, with all of the time trials and the wave starts, and you never know who's starting behind you and who's starting with you, and it's all kind of mixed in, and different distance of races going on while you're racing. And I just kind of got in the practice of anytime I saw anybody, just saying something supportive. And I feel that kind of positive, almost external positive affirmation can be really beneficial to your own running, but also just lifts up a lot of people. I mean, we are fortunate as coaches to get a nice window seat into the lives of many people. I mean, and that's how you affect the most change. But at the same, and we sort of learn what the ebb and flow of life and the challenges that people really work through to get to these start lines. And so, I think there is only really one way to act towards other competitors on the start line. And that's with, empathy and grace, no matter what, and to always be supportive of everybody out there, because that they've all navigated the highs and lows of life to get to that point, to get out there and try that race, whether they're the best runner in the world or, it's their first race ever. Yeah. And they kind of deserve to be seen like that, I feel. Yeah, I hope that answered the question to the author. This was just such a good one. I feel like we could go even deeper. But if you've ever, I think, for me, it's always good to just remind myself that, competition is collaboration, especially with these ultras. It's just, I couldn't even imagine the logistics of putting one of these things together.
Yeah. And the last part of it says, how do you distinguish healthy versus unhealthy competition? I would say healthy competition makes you feel more connected to yourself and others, and unhealthy competition disconnects you from your sense of self and disconnects you from your community.
I love that. Exactly. That's like a complete departure from the collaborative state.
Yeah. And I just like our culture generally is like so effed up about competition. And I always feel like, the people who are out on Instagram spraying about like, if you're not willing to die to be the best, I'm like, I don't know, like,
yeah,
I feel like those are,
like
unfollow, like, let's see how your career is doing in like 5 years / how your mental health is doing.
Another really great question. I think these are all kind of in alignment with each other. I'm really interested to hear from Kristen and Kylee on this one. Did your relationships with running and or your own coaches change when you started coaching athletes yourselves? What lessons did you learn from coaching that made you a better athlete? Kristen, Kylee, do you want to kind of lead off on this one?
Yeah, sure. Kylee,
Awesome.
If you want to go, I can jump in too. Yes, my relationship with my own coach, David Roach, changed quite a bit. When I started coaching athletes myself, he went from someone I considered a friend and a coach to someone I very quickly considered like a mentor, like a teacher, because I could field questions to him, I could ask questions. And the same goes with the rest of the coaches. We have a Slack channel where we can kind of like bounce ideas and questions off of each other as coaches. And that's been really helpful too. Just getting like different perspectives when you kind of feel pigeonholed or when you just don't know. I think it's been a really cool way to encourage the other coaches and encourage my own coach and feel encouraged and empowered myself by being more vulnerable, opening up another level to the friendship and just learning more from each other. So I think it's been really cool.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Kristen, for that perspective. Kylee?
I've actually been coaching since trying to remember now, 2009. And I went from running in college to coaching college right out of school. And so that was an interesting kind of perspective change, I guess. It was kind of difficult to be like the same age as the people I was coaching. But it did shift my perspective in regards to the challenges that coaches face. And also just with the experience that I've had running and the number of coaches that I've had, gave me some valuable insight into like how I wanted to be as a coach and how I wanted to coach athletes, and things that maybe I found were, unhelpful from certain coaches that I had. I was like, I never want to be like that, So I guess that's kind of how my perspective shifted a little bit when I switched over to coaching from that athlete perspective. And then I try to bring in the things that I liked about coaches that I had into my coaching with my athletes, and specifically like being really supportive. I found that the coaches that were not supportive and like were really hard on the athletes, like honestly, it didn't really motivate many people. So making sure that I'm like always supportive of my athletes, listening to my athletes as well. I felt like oftentimes as a high school and collegiate runner that we weren't necessarily listened to. And so really trying to be open to listening to other people's perspectives and that sort of thing. And then having that holistic approach too, which is what I really like about Microcosm, focusing on other things like, your sleep, stress, nutrition, all of those things, which I think oftentimes are overlooked. And it's, here's your training plan. And it's just like, you're not considering what else is going on in someone's life. And I think that that's a really important piece of the whole picture as well.
Yeah, thank you. Gosh, both of you guys have just such great answers to that. And it brings up, so much for me in my own coaching as well. Yeah, Zoe, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, two of my like big role models, and like definitely I think of David as a mentor as well. It's like, how do you build a space where athletes can show up fully and authentically as themselves? Like, not just like, again, like if all I cared about was your data, I would just Strava stalk you. And that would be like how I would coach. But it's really important to me that I call it, for my athletes, I call it a safe space and a brave space where they can, be their full selves and where they can dream really, really big, because they know that I will support them unconditionally. And that doesn't always mean being like, yes, love this goal, let's definitely run a 100 within your first year of training. It means like we have a space of trust where they know I will give them the feedback that will benefit them as a person and athlete most. And I think that that's a really, really important thing to build, and to just like, again, give them an area where they can dream really big as an athlete and be really brave as a person. I really think of like also Lauren Fleshman as a role model in this space. And she has kind of redefined what it looks like to coach, particularly female athletes, and coach from a distinctly feminine perspective, which is in allowing athletes to flourish as people, and in like really supporting them in that flourishing as humans. They will flourish and grow the most as athletes. And I think that that is a perspective that I really, really look for in coaching as well.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, oh man, I could just talk for so long. I'm going to try to be concise with all the things that are going through my head right now. Yeah, it's been interesting. I've been an athlete and a coach my entire life, as a collegiate athlete, and then on so forth into, ski career and run career and coaching career. And there have, my perspective, especially in the coaching process, has changed so much over time. I think, gone are the days where you can check in with an athlete once a week and feel like you're giving them good, sound coaching. I think that form of coaching is completely void of the touch points necessary for really giving an athlete the time and space that they deserve, in order to help them to achieve the goals that they have, and to help to kind of cultivate the process of getting better. And, that kind of really brings me back to things that I learned from my college coach, and then again from our coach, because that was from David, that was the first time I had seen in the running world a coach that was checking in with athletes, every single day. And I definitely, began to see the value of that through the holistic lens. I mean, that's what, started this whole business basically. And our entire approach to coaching was really kind of a marriage of those two things, something that I took from kind of the tennis world, which is what my first background in athletics, and then saw in David's coaching as a runner, and then, really started to marry over into the microcosm philosophy. And I think that that's just vital, those touch points. And, I definitely have learned a lot about, I think, boundary setting for myself. This is something that really comes up for me, how many touch points is necessary to really give the athlete the attention they need. We've kind of collectively come to the conclusion that's about 5 or 6 check-ins a week, plus all of the extra stuff that kind of goes on. with questions and back and forth and things like that. Because there does need to be a little bit of time. And this is something that I've definitely taken from David, but more like inferred from David's coaching, which is that too much hand holding isn't good for athletes as well. Athletes need to be able to reach their own conclusions in their own time. And sometimes failure is part of that process. And although, I'm of the philosophy that, always do your best to steer athletes away from failure in DNFs, whether in life or running, sometimes the hard learning is really vital to the athlete's kind of learning process, gaining important and valuable perspectives and continuing to move forward and to get better. So over touching, over communication, and not letting the athlete kind of make autonomous decisions, develop their independence as an athlete, can be very detrimental. And I think I definitely started as a big hand holder, way heavy in the support, not enough tough love. There is definitely time and space for tough love, especially for athletes who are really, just kind of giving excuses for the reasons that they don't get out
you
the
wouldn't
door.
give people tough love if you didn't believe in their potential.
Totally.
Right? Like if there was someone you're like, yeah, I don't really think you're capable of growing, you would be like, yay,
Yeah.
But like, I think the athletes should feel connected to when like we're able to be like, yo, you fell short of your potential. Like, what the heck are you thinking running on a rest day? Or like, what do you mean you added in 10 extra hill sprints? Like, what the heck? Like when you're able to be like, yo, here's where you are shortchanging yourself here. Like that's how your coach believes in you. If your coach didn't believe in you, you'd just be getting golf claps and a gold star every day.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting. I think particularly, because this question asks about my background in the relationship that I've developed with running and coaching through my own experiences. I had in college really, really tough coaches. Very tough, very little support. I totally agree. Yeah. Oh, totally. Especially early on, my freshman year of college. And then, there was a coaching change and that coach really, was amazing and definitely somebody that I refer back to in my coaching today for just having amazing techniques, specifically around preparedness for big events. Which, if you guys aren't visualizing race performance in the week before race performance, start to do that. Really helps. That's a technique that I really learned, from him. And I think some other, really important and vital lessons, I think, just from being a coached athlete is kind of that understanding, again, like what Kylee mentioned, the challenges that coaches face, how much our time is in demand. Sometimes all of those little extra contact points all the time wear me down, to be completely honest. And like, I've not been good at always taking rest. And I've definitely used examples of other coaches who somehow are just relentlessly always present. And I found that doesn't work for me, that I have to take space in order to actually truly be present. And I sometimes wonder if those coaches are merely giving kind of automated responses, or if they are being present. Well, let me talk. Sorry. And I think that also, in understanding that, I've become a better communicator as an athlete, which is just, part of the process, right? Like you start to better interpret what your body's telling you, and you're better able to communicate that feedback. So then you can elicit, the kind of response from your coach that you really need in order to perform better the next day or to have a better workout the next day. And so, that's been like a 3 or 4 year process for me to really get down. Like that wasn't something that I like knew how to do at first. Like I was a total, I would say, overshare, over communicator, I think in my first few years as an athlete. And that's just definitely something that I feel like has brought more value to my training as an athlete, getting right down to the heart of the matter, rather than, kind of over coloring it with extra context that, maybe wasn't as important, and could have maybe distracted the coach from like really getting to like what was necessary to give feedback on. I feel like, that's probably kind of where I'm at with that question. Yeah. Did anything else come to mind for you, Zoe, or for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I feel
such a good
fortunate. Oh, sorry, what?
It's just such a good question. We all want to talk about it. Go ahead, Kristen.
Like, we could do a whole talk on just this, but I feel super fortunate to have had like really great coaches. In high school, I had a really awesome coach who kind of like got us all to love to run. That was, I think in hindsight, I think that was his goal. And I mean, for a lot of us, it worked. And then I had a bad experience my first year at college, but then I went to Oregon and I had an excellent experience and was able to just soak in everything that I could from my coach at the time, Tom Heinonen, who just really, I remember thinking like, if I ever have the opportunity to be a coach, this is the kind of coach I want to be. This is the kind of person I want to be. And just kind of embodied everything that he did, everything that he represented was so important to me because he was genuine in his interest. He was genuine in his approach to things. And there are a lot of coaches out there who just aren't, who are very either hold your hand too much or check in once a week. And it's not what we're here to do. So I think, yeah, like going from being coached by Tom to doing my own thing for a while and having no idea and meeting a coach and then finding David, I just feel super fortunate to have had so many wonderful humans who are also coaches, kind of like help direct that journey for me. And so anytime I get a new athlete, like I'm so excited to like, not only just like be a cheerleader and be in their corner, but, you know, just forever be like a hype girl and really like go for it with like dreaming big and shooting for the stars with their goals. I think that's so important to have someone who really believes in you. Because sometimes, there are days where you're not going to believe in yourself. So when you have someone else who can do that for you and remind you why you're here in the first place, I think that's so important.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, gosh, that's probably one of the most important things that we can do. You know, like Zoe mentioned before, like creating a safe and brave space so you can like really say like, my big dream is X, Y, and Z. Can you help me get there? How long is that going to take? Like, what is the training? What does the work look like for this? And, you know, to get that response, like, hell yeah, you can do this. Like, here's what we need to do. Like, if you're ready to do this, like, we're going to get you there. And I think that that's so important, you know, to be able to feel like not judged in that kind of when you put yourself out there like that, because it's really vulnerable to say like, I've never run 100 miles, but I really want to, or like, I've, you know, always had a dream of like going to this place and doing this. And like, you know, if you feel, I think as an athlete, if you feel like the space, you're just going to get shot down on that every time, that's really, really challenging. And so then you're going to feel stifled, right? Like you're not going to be able to express the fullness of who you are and what your dreams are and how those dreams kind of really reflect back to your value system, your inner you, your why, all of those important things that, you know, without all of that, the training becomes less sustainable. The coaching feels less genuine, you know, and it just probably doesn't work out really in the end. So it's really nice as a coach to hear you guys kind of frame how you approach that in your own coaching, you know, the safe, brave space. Kristen, for you, it's like really hyping those like big goals and dreams. So people feel like supported and not nervous about that. And it like, I always feel like as a coach, like, oh man, like, how do I be like, I'm a yes to this goal, but like, I'm a no for that next week because you've only been training with me for a month. Like, and it's so hard. I feel so challenged as a coach to like give the response that like, I really want to give, which is like, I love that goal, especially if that's your dream. But I really want you to think about this like in a healthy timeline, right? Like not rushing this, like not putting your health and your longevity at risk for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that goes to say, like with athletes who have these like really big goals and might be a little more inconsistent, you kind of get into this position where it's like, I want to hype this up. I want you to achieve your goals, but looking back at your training log, like the consistency is not there, and that's going to need to change. And so that's kind of when like the tough love part comes in, but it can still be done from like an exciting and like friendly place,
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Totally. Yeah. Zoe, did you want the kind of the last word on this?
No.
Okay, cool. Kylie? All right. We've got one more question. I feel like it actually is really similar to what we were just talking about with our relationship to our coaches, and the things that we've learned from our coaches. But this question is about role models. Would you discuss your role models in running and life? Who are they? What is it about them that you like, and what do you learn from them? Maybe 1 minute per coach here. Zoe, you want to start?
Yeah, my role models would probably be my coach, David, and my teammate, Claire Gallagher, because they have a profound sense of how to leverage their individual success for community benefit.
Oh, I love that. Kristen. Can just be one.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like all the microcosm coaches, I think that there's different pieces of each of our approaches and each of our personalities, like as friends and as coaches, that I really love. And like, it's kind of like, when we finally get to hang out in person and you leave thinking like, oh, I want to be a better person, or, oh, I want to be more like Zoe, or, like I have friends like that too, where I'm like, oh, I want to be more like X, Y, and Z. And they just kind of like reshape your perspective of things. And I think that that's really important. I think David Roach is a good person who does that for me. Claire Gallagher is also someone that I definitely admire. But then there are people in my everyday life too, that are like, things that have happened with my husband or with my mom, and just like seeing the way they react to life circumstances as well is just like really nice, that you can take all of these things happening and bring them together and then base your decision off of that.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
I think that like everyone I surround myself with is someone that I want to like be more like, and it's sort of like the culture of excellence that we've talked about before. Yeah. And if I choose not to hang out with someone, that's why. Like, I would much rather spend my time with people I admire.
Absolutely, as you should. Kylie, what are your thoughts?
So mine would be, I had my high school coach he got killed in a car accident when I was a junior in high school. But everyone like looked up to him. He was just so kind and like really supportive of like the first person on the team and the last person. And so I really admire his ability to kind of work with every single person with his like kind heart, and then trying to give that to my athletes as well, is something that I really strive to do. And he's somebody that I have tried to like emulate throughout my life ever since that point in high school. So that would be my person.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. I think for me, I kind of go back and forth as to kind of who my main role models are. Obviously, on the coaching side in running side is David. I just love his, he's just been such a great resource for me in my career. And I've just been so profoundly grateful to him and for the role that he's played in helping us I think, from a sports perspective as well, Roger Federer is somebody that I really follow and I've always followed as a big tennis player. I just really like how his demeanor and how kind of thoughtful he is, especially with addressing all of his successes. He really is a kind of a class act. And then, another person who is more of an artist, Julian Lage, he's a guitar player. Somebody that also really inspires me, particularly in the ability to address the inner critic in such a thoughtful way. I think that as athletes and passionate people, everybody on this call really can relate to just having challenges with their own inner critic and that voice, and kind of his approach to accepting that voice, recognizing it and working with it has really kind of changed the way that I think about my own inner voice. And again, just kind of like Roger, just such a very calming presence and demeanor. Well, yeah, thank you guys. This is one of my more favorite calls of recent. I'm glad. Thank you all for these questions. They're really thought provoking. As usual, stimulated a lot of great conversation. And yeah, I hope everybody has a great weekend. I know we're looking forward to it. And yeah, hope you guys are too. We'll see you on Monday. Woo! Bye.